future field trips with the Bean Museum, guys. Today we're going to be talking about traces from animals. So sometimes when you're out in the wild, when you're going on a hike, when you're looking around for different things to put into your field journal, you may not find the animal themselves. You might not see a deer or a bear or a bobcat or any of those things, but you can almost always find evidence that an animal was there. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. I'm going to show you some examples of things that you can find. So first off, some things that you can easily find are tracks. Now tracks, you'll usually find them in really soft mud or in like sand. So if you're out in the desert, you might see tracks in the sand for maybe like a snake or a squirrel or a bird. So definitely keep your eye out for different tracks. You can draw them in your field journal to be able to look them up later to see what animal made that track. Or you can take a picture of them and put that in your field journal, right? Now other things that animals leave behind are sheds. Now you'll see this a lot with snakes. We have some snake shed here in this box. Ugh. This is just, it's this kind of fluffy stuff right here. It's just dead skin from a snake, and it usually comes off in one big long tube. So these are just chunks from sheds. And if you find these, then you know that a snake recently came by and shed its skin, which is pretty cool. They do that, kind of depends on the snake, but on average about once, maybe every month or two. So you can find those. Other things that shed are actually things like tarantulas. So if you're out in the desert, you might be able to find the exoskeleton of a tarantula that's been shed off. And it looks like a whole tarantula, but there's nobody home inside of it. So that's a pretty cool shed that you can find. Another one that you probably didn't expect is that you might find shedding of antlers. Now, every year, deer regrow their antlers. So they grow them all through the winter, okay? They lose them in the fall. They fall off. They are bone, but they aren't like attached to the skull in the same way. They're just attached right here, kind of on this little nubbin. And so they fall off in the fall. So you can find antlers like this in the fall. You can find, then in the winter, they regrow. And in the spring, you'll find the velvets from the antlers. So this right here is an antler with velvet on it. It has this fuzzy stuff right here. And as the antlers regrow, this fuzz helps supply blood to it until they're done growing, and then it gets really itchy and the deer rubs their antlers against trees and things and the velvet comes off. So you might see shed velvet, which is where you'll just see kind of like fuzzy, bloody chunks on trees. And that sounds really gross and really violent, but it's not. It's just part of the growth process every year from deer. So you can find the velvets in the spring, you'll find the antlers in the fall. Some other common things you might find are things like feathers. Birds shed their feathers on a fairly regular basis, and so you might find shed feathers out in the woods or out where you're looking. You can possibly find lots of down feathers, but also even flight feathers. When a bird sheds its flight feathers, it does it evenly on each side, so it'll shed the same feather on both sides so that when they fall off, they can still fly. Some other things you might find shells at lakes or at beaches, especially by the ocean. You'll find tons of shells. These are traces that an animal was there. You might find chunks of fur. This is a full fur, so you probably wouldn't find something like this, but you might find a couple of hairs that get stuck in like a bush or in brambles and things like that. So keep your eye out for things like that. Or you might even find something like bones. If you're out in the woods and you find some bones, it'd be a really cool idea to take a picture or draw the shape of the bone and maybe approximate the size. Like you could be like, okay, this bone, if I found this in the woods, I'd say it's about the size of 2 hands of my hand, right? So I could say, okay, it's about that big. So then you could go home and look up animals that might have a bone this size, and you might be able to figure out what animal it used to be. This could be from an animal that just died, or it could be something that was eaten. So there's lots and lots of cool traces of animals that you can find. Even if you don't see the animal itself running through the woods, eating, taking care of its babies, any of those things, you can find evidence everywhere you look.
Hello everybody, let's talk about our activity for this week. We're going to do a quick review of some of the things that Marin taught us today, okay? We're going to ask that you guys, of course, get outside and start looking for some of these traces in the environment, okay? So let's bring it back, remembering footprints. They could be impressions. You might be able to find these maybe in mud or maybe in some grass. There might be some markings. Sheds, those could be antlers, fur, feathers, maybe some with velvet on, maybe some with not. They could just be in the grass. Bones, when we say carcasses, this could be an animal that maybe got eaten and is still decomposing. Marin talked about that a little bit. And we forgot to mention some nests. You could look in the trees, or maybe they've fallen down. It's kind of the dry time in Utah, so they might be on the ground too. Or holes and burrows, maybe somewhere where an animal has been digging, or maybe a mound where another animal might be living. And markings on trees, what we're talking about with that is could be where a bear has scratched or another animal has maybe rubbed their body against it. So there could be fur stuck in the bark of a tree, or there could also just be straight up scratches. So these are the kind of things that we're looking for. Scat and owl pellets, these are the poops, you guys, and it's really exciting to find them because that means they're close, really, really close. And when we're thinking owl pellets, they kind of look like just a hodgepodge of things mixed together, but it's kind of a big clump. So it could have bones in it, could have a little bit of fur in it. That's kind of what we're looking for. And scat could be from any animal. You could be looking for deer, elk, cougars, who's to say? But these are those traces that we're looking for. So we want you guys to get out there, look for these traces, bring your field journal, take pictures, put things in your field journal. Be really careful about just touching things that you find out there. Some of these things might have bacteria on them or other insects that could be a little harmful to you. So make sure you take your pictures and be wise, but bring your field journal and get out there. We'll see you guys next week.